Today, we're going to review the brand new 2024 purchase contract recently released by the Hawaii Association of Realtors. My name is Patrick ONeill. I'm the chair of the Standard Forms Committee for the Hawaii Association of Realtors and also the principal broker owner of Luxury Homes International here in Honolulu, Hawaii. Okay, so let's get right at it, and we're going to start with a disclaimer. I am not here today representing the Hawaii Association of Realtors or any realtor group. Nothing I say today should be considered legal advice, and if you are a licensee, please check with your principal broker and legal representatives for your company's policies and procedures. When we look at the brand new purchase contract, there's some changes which are technical legal grammar, not going to cover those today. There's clarification of some existing terms, we'll look at those, but more I want to focus on the changes in the current practice and what's more important. So let's get right to it. First one, under the delivery of the initial earnest money deposit, it's been simplified and shortened. No longer does the buyer have to select how they're going to deliver the funds, but just simply to get it there in X business days. Now, Section C has a couple new changes here. One is the capitalization of additional deposit. When a word is capitalized in the purchase contract, that makes it a defined word. And I'll show you why that's important when we get to O-1, the default provision. Now, C3 and C4 are brand new terms that have been added to the purchase contract that relate directly to the new NAR policy, which was a direct relation from the NAR settlement that recently took place. C3, seller concessions to buyer, are credits to the buyer. So a concession is a credit. In this blank here, you can fill in whatever that might be if the seller is going to offer some sort of credit to the seller. C4 is seller compensation payment to the buyer's brokerage firm. So this is the seller paying directly to the buyer's brokerage firm for the compensation amount on behalf of the buyer. So if we look at C3, this is a credit to the buyer. The buyer can use this credit in any way they want. They might use it to pay down their mortgage, maybe buy down the rate, pay for closing costs, or they might use a portion of that to pay for their buyer representation. C4 is a direct payment from the seller to the buyer's brokerage firm. There's also a sentence here which designates the buyer's brokerage firm as an intended third-party beneficiary. This gives the buyer's brokerage firm the right to enforce paragraph C-4. Now, D-1, there's two new addenda that have been added, which are now available in the HAR library. In E2, the microwave hood has been added. I know a lot of agents have been waiting for that one, so that is there now. And existing carpet has been changed to existing flooring materials. Apparently, some people were ripping up their wood floors when they left. So that will now cover those. Also deleted from E2 is the photovoltaic system and security alarm system. Those now have their own paragraphs, which we'll cover in just a moment. So E5, inclusion of photovoltaic systems. This is a brand new paragraph, brand new section here. Now, photovoltaic systems can be rather complicated. So if you're a listing broker, make sure you have this type of information available when you take the listing. In E5, the seller will deliver the documents that are available within X days after acceptance date. And you can see here the buyer will then have a review period in which they can review those documents. Now, inclusion of security alarm systems is slightly different. In this case, as part of the seller's disclosure statement, the seller will provide all applicable and available documents. Now, F1, this is important. Closing is now a defined word. So a capital word, defined word. If you have any documents that reference the word closing, make sure that you update those. We also have a new provision in the purchase contract. If a party does not deliver all the documents, everything that's needed to close on time, the other party can issue the default notice. Before this, we had to wait until closing before the party defaulted to issue the default notice. So this will just speed up that process once we know one party is not going to perform. F2, this is very important. Scheduled closing date has been deleted entirely from the purchase contract. We are now using just one word, which is closing date. Again, if you have documents that you use inside your company, make sure that you update that to just closing date. Now, F3, very important change here. This relates to the unilateral right to extend. Previously, with the unilateral right to extend, if either party used a portion of the unilateral right, then that was it. No party could use the balance. It's now been changed. So this unilateral right can be used by either party until the full balance is used up. For example, if this had a 15-day period in here, Party A could use 5 days, Party B could use 5 days. There's still another 5 days that either party could use as part of a unilateral extension of the closing date. F8, this is also a very important change which relates to assessments. There's basically 3 types of assessments. One assessment is a lump sum assessment. This could be, for example, $50,000 to upgrade the air conditioning system in the building. If there's a lump sum assessment, this could be paid in full by the seller, or it could be assumed by the buyer. A second type of assessment is something that is levied against the property, which is being paid in installments, but it does have a known end date or it does have a lump payment option. If that's the case, again, the seller could agree to pay that in full at closing, or it could be prorated as of the closing date. Now, the third type is assessments which are being paid in installments and they don't have a known end date and they don't have a lump sum payment option. So there would be no way to pay that off in full. Those assessments will automatically be prorated as of closing. This is a new term in section F8. And I just point this out, this is not a new term, but just to make everybody aware, if a new assessment is authorized between the time of acceptance date and closing, the parties have 5 days to agree on how that will be treated, or either party could terminate the purchase contract. Hi, this is Patrick. If you're enjoying this information, please consider giving us a thumbs up below and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next month's housing report. G2 just added language here regarding the type of title the seller is going to give to the buyer, and it must be insurable title as well. Now, H4 has been simplified. If this is an all cash offer, you can simply select H1-A is attached with the purchase contract, referring to the proof of cash funds. Previously, we had to find a space to type that in. So we see that change here. H2, in addition, we've added obtaining a hard money or private loan. This has been put in here to help educate agents who were putting this in all cash when actually it's a hard money loan, which is something contingent. So this will help to educate as well. Conditional loan letter now replaces the term conditional commitment letter. These are the proper terms. This was provided by the Mortgage Bankers Association. There's also another change here. In the previous purchase contract, the contract required the conditional loan approval to also have the satisfaction of the appraisal. Sometimes in different loan companies would not put that onto one letter, which was required. That now can be delivered separately or together. So that will improve the process and line up with what everybody actually is doing. Under I3B, this is mandatory seller's disclosure. If the seller does not deliver the disclosure within X amount of time to the buyer, then the buyer may terminate under paragraph O-3. Previously, that would have been a termination under the default provision. A lot of red ink here. There's a lot of important changes under I3, and I think you'll find these to be good. So we have now combined all 3 of these into one date, whether it's receipt of the disclosure statement, receipt of an amended disclosure statement, or buyer's later discovery of inaccurate information. This is a big change. So buyers, when they become aware of inaccurate information, the clock will start ticking whatever is inserted here into I3B. Under the general disclosures, want to make it clear that if there are issues with building permits, that the buyer may also become responsible for those even after the conveyance of the property. Under the general disclosures, a new paragraph has been inserted regarding abandoned wells. This is something we see more often on the neighbor islands, not so much in Honolulu. If you do have a property with an abandoned well, make sure that you're complying with the new statute. J9, we brought back the very popular cleaning credit. So now rather than having the property cleaned, the buyer could just request a cleaning credit and they could clean the property themselves when they move in. J10, animal related treatment. Previously, this stated X days after closing. That treatment now must be done X days before closing. And once the treatment is done, all animals must be removed other than service animals. K2 now requires the survey map regardless if there is improvements along the property line. This has been the normal business practice, but the paragraph was a little bit outdated. That's brought up to what we're all practicing now. Now, K3, this is a big change. If an encroachment is found on the property, previously the seller was required to get an encroachment agreement, and that can be very difficult sometimes. This has been changed now to say that once the encroachment is known, the buyer will have X days in which they can terminate the purchase contract or move forward. And the hope here is that the buyer and the seller can negotiate whatever is appropriate based on that encroachment. Now, M1, one big important change, when you're delivering the documents now, you must also provide an itemized list of those documents. I think most companies were already doing this. It's now a requirement under the purchase contract. So be sure you comply with that. Under M2, delivery of the documents, we've just updated it into the modern era using the ability to use storage devices or hyperlinks to a specific document, and we removed CD and DVD as a way to deliver those documents. And I just want to point this out too, in addition to M3, if there are documents issued during the escrow period, then the seller must deliver those to the buyer within X days of discovery. And you can see the default here would be 3 days if that is left blank. O1, this is what I mentioned earlier in section C, that additional deposit is now defined. So we can see these two defined words, initial earnest money and additional deposit. O1 is the default provision. So under O-1B, the seller could retain the initial earnest money and the additional deposit as defined in C2. Previously, when it was not defined, sellers were defining additional deposits to be all cash that the buyer had brought to the transaction, sometimes the full amount. So this would help to clarify that section. P1, dealing with HARPTA, has just been updated to use the proper terms that escrow uses, and the same thing with FERPTA, just using the updated terms to get those in line. The fair housing has been updated slightly to comply with the current regulations. And these are the other the other documents that have been updated that relate to the purchase contract. And you can see the list here. Most of the changes are very minor, but the cooperating brokerage firm separate agreement has been revised to comply with the new NAR policy changes. And the extension of scheduled closing date is now called closing date. And we've inserted language to match the new F3A in the purchase contract. Okay, so I hope that helped you. Again, if you are a licensee, check with your principal broker, legal representatives for your company's policies and procedures. So until next time, be well, be kind, and aloha.